We're talking about breaking bad habits. There's two types of clients in the credit world. There's circumstantial. Went through a circumstance 10 years ago, stuff got off track, but you have good habits, right? We like that type of client in the credit world. How about the client that's habitual, that has bad habits, and they don't know how to break these bad habits? They've had it from the time that they first started paying credit cards and vehicles. You look at these, we see these credit reports like every single day.
They're still behind, still in that same loop of almost insanity, trying to do the same thing and get a different result.
Well, we want to help those people.
So how can we change and break the bad habits? My first steps are being aware of them, acknowledging that the habits are bad, and identifying them as a negative habit that's not benefiting them.
That's a great point.
You have to be aware, right?
If you're going to get control on anything, I always say, first we got to define it.
Yeah.
Because before we cannot refine our actions until we define what is going on, the circumstances.
What isn't working in this situation?
Yeah. So first, how do you define something is coming down to what questions you're asking.
Right.
Because there's reasonings behind it. There's emotion behind it. There's like whatever habits have taken place. A habit is an unconscious programming that comes from beliefs, which are conscious, which comes from the words and the thoughts and the ideas people have.
It's so almost what false story are you telling yourself in your head, right?
Yeah, well, and so that's the point, is that I guess from a consultative point of view, the way to help someone is to really like dig deep and ask the right questions to figure out where they're actually coming from. We can maybe guide them in the right direction.
What sources your habits? Where did they come from?
Yeah, like because how can you see the picture if you're in the frame? I mean, that's why we have parents that, and the issue is, when we grow up, our parents go away, and then we don't have any other mentors. Like, that's
sometimes we take some of their bad habits.
Yeah, and that's true. Like, because we become around the most.
Yeah.
I could say personally, actually, that I used to be afraid too much about like spending or overspending, but there's a certain degree of risk that you have to take when you go into business.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. So there's that happy medium. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt. It's a good thing to have good credit, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. So I guess it's going back to, what are you telling yourself?
What stories are you making up in your head? What are I call them the false rewards.
Okay.
I have to keep doing this because I'm paying my bills on time, or because I'm doing X, Y, and Z, or because I'm supporting my children, I'm late on my bills, my credit. It's a false story. You're telling yourself you're replacing a bad habit with a good outcome. Why not create a win-win and create that good habit and have a better outcome?
Well, what about the person that, like, there's people, if they're being late on things, is it because that they just don't have enough money?
Well, that's their habit.
Let me add some value there.
Because I'm trying to gauge that.
One of the tips that I give all the time with credit cards and stuff like that. So here's a very simple thing you could do. Set it and forget it. Set anything up where it comes out automatically. You've actually created a good habit there. I don't have to think about my car payment when I wake up on a Friday. It's done. Set it, forget it.
You would think in the automation age, though, people would do that.
It's so simple.
So that's actually my next point. Once you identified it, acknowledged it, and you're aware of it, you identify where it came from. How can we change it? Well, replace it with a good habit. It's like the classic smoking. Replace smoking with chewing gum. Right? Same thing. Replace late payments.
I think we're missing something big.
What are we missing?
It might be.
Because how can you get to habit if you don't sit down and treat your life like a business, profit and loss, meaning your life, right? Your life is a business. It's your vision to a solution of whatever problems you have, and your success or how well you do with your bills and your credit and all that comes down to what it costs for you to live and what you have coming in.
Right.
The question you have to ask yourself, if you don't ever sit down and define your profit and loss statement, you don't sit down with your spouse, your girlfriend, or yourself every once a month and look at, this is my expenses, this is where everything's going, this is my income. If you don't do that, then you don't know if you're cash flow positive or not.
And
if you're not setting and so you can set and forget it and still be cash flow negative. But most, I don't think, are even doing that.
And that's another area
Why would
fall
they?
up on, right?
That's not common sense.
You could be using your credit, which is where people get into $50,000 worth of credit. Because they're in the red, but they just don't want to admit it.
Most people, I would say, because I've seen this as well. I mean, think about it. It could be a common sense thing to do because we never sit down and get taught to look at my life's a business. What's my income? What are my expenses? And if my expenses are too great 1 month than my income,
right,
I use the credit card to pay my expenses, and the interest is and miss it crazy, and then you miss one
25%.
payment, and now you're screwed.
Credits in this whole,
and you won't get back.
So let's
and then you
recap.
dig the hole, and then culturally you feel bad about telling anybody. Probably.
Right. So and then let's recap this. So now they're stuck in this whirlwind of downhill habits. They acknowledge them. They're with them. They source where they're coming from. They sat down, analyzed their sheet. What can they do? Like you just said, replace it with a good habit. Pay your credit cards on time.
Well, the first thing you have to do is get help. No, I mean, like, really, right?
Well, you could go the Grant Cardone approach, right? I mean, I try to never look at my expenses. I try to look at how can I make more income. But that's just me. Maybe I'm not relatable. But
Well, 98% of people are relatable to that.
Yeah.
And 98% of people are,
we talked
you're
about
helping.
that 2%. I wasn't supposed to mention it, right?
Well, you're conventional all day. No, this is the thing. At the end of the day, from day one, if you're having issues paying bills, we got to look at our expenses. We're a business.
Absolutely.
And at least figure out where we are. It's like, how much, all right, that's where I'm at. So can I automate it or not?
Yep.
Because, for example, if you're not automating it and you're all over the place because life happens and you don't know where your expenses are, and then you put things on a credit card, now you really are screwed.
Yeah.
Maybe you had $400 of cash flow at the end of the month. Like
Yep.
your job gives you $10,000 a month and your expenses are $7,000 a month. So maybe you had $3,000, but then you went on vacation when you really shouldn't have went on vacation. And then what happened? The interest on the card is high, and now you're screwed.
Yeah.
Why is he laughing
That's a
so
fantastic
hard?
way to look at it with looking at your budget like
I
a
love
business.
this, dude.
I love
Oh
that.
my God, it's crazy. Your life is a business.
That's
You have
true.
a profit and loss statement.
So there's our solution. You treat your life like a business. That's
Like
how
a
you run it.
business.
Exactly.
What vision? First, if you haven't sat
The
down,
business running you, or you running the business?
you're
right?
getting
You're-
most people get run by the business, man,
Yeah.
of life.